One of the ways that ancient peoples thought about and imagined metals was that metals were material things that had light in them. So we could make any kind of equation that metal equals matter plus light. And this equation is, I think, fundamental for much symbolism around metals. So the different metals were seen as having different kinds of light in them. Sometimes even as being materialized light. So the different kinds of light materialized made the different metals. And the different kinds of light were the lights of the heavens and especially the planets. One way it was imagined was that light coming from the sun came down through our atmosphere into the earth and congealed into gold. So gold then would be solidified sunlight. And silver, on the other hand, would be solidified moonlight. So the light of the moon coming down at night into the earth, gathered in the earth, and formed and solidified into silver. So silver would be seen as materialized moonlight and gold as materialized sunlight. So then all the properties, powers, energies of the sun would be in gold, not only by a likeness that gold looks like the sun, but by a connection that gold was materialized sunlight. And so also silver, if someone had a piece of silver, an object made of silver, silver jewelry, they have moonlight and they have moon power and something that brings and transmits all the energies, attributes, qualities of the moon. So with the other metals and the other planets, sometimes the metals were actually referred to as the earthly or terrestrial planets. So the planets up in the heavens are the heavenly planets. The metals are the earthly planets. And the 7 planets that the ancients knew of gave us, through their different lights, the 7 metals. And gold and silver and their relation to the sun and the moon are more obvious and easier to understand. The other connections aren't as obvious, maybe aren't always as consistent, but one common way they were associated was that lead was the metal of Saturn, tin, the metal of Jupiter, silver, the metal of the moon, Mercury, the metal Mercury, also called quicksilver, meaning moving liquid, living silver. Mercury was the metal of the planet Mercury. Copper was the metal of the planet Venus. Iron, the metal of the planet Mars. And gold, the metal of the planet Sun. In the 7 planets and 7 metals were reflections of each other and very connected with each other. The 7 metals being the congealed lights of the planets, sometimes as the fruits of the activity of the heavens upon the earth. In the entire picture of the universe, the metals and planets were a mean and interface between the two further poles of spirit and matter, so and heaven and earth. The heavens, the furthest heavens of the fixed stars, the unchanging stars, was characterized by the number 12, the 12 signs of the zodiac, and the shape of the sphere or the circle. But within and through the 12 signs of the zodiac, in the sphere of the fixed stars, moved the planets. Planet from the Greek word plane, meaning wandering. So the wandering, moving stars were known to be 7. So when the ancients looked up into the heavens, they saw a whole background of fixed stars, and through the belt of the zodiac, certain stars, 7 of them, wandered. And these were the 7 planets. At the further pole of matter, the first forms of matter were thought to be 4: earth, air, fire, and water. So 4 and the square and cube, symbols of matter and the further material pole. And between them are the 7 planets and 7 metals, between the 12 and the 4 of the unchanging heavens and the first forms of matter. So the 7 planets moving within the 12 signs of the zodiac are the moving parts of the heavens, are the transmitters of the influence of the heavens upon the earth. And the ripened fruits of this influence of heaven on earth are the 7 metals. So the 7 of the planets and the metals is the realm and number of the evolution and transformation and development within the universe, the interaction of heaven and earth. The 7 is 3 plus 4, whereas 12 is 3 times 4. If we think of 3 as the purely spiritual divine number, and 4 as the material earthly number, then the first meeting of the spirit and matter, 3 plus 4, is the number 7. But then when 3 and 4 are combined in the complete fruitful union of multiplication, the number 12 is generated. So 12 is often the number of the completed, perfected universe, both in West and the Far East. So in images for the completed world universal temple, it often has the structure number of 12, such as in the book of the Apocalypse, the heavenly Jerusalem, the image of the goal and perfection of the universe has 12 gates. Also in Hindu and Far Eastern imagery of the goal and completion of the universe is a similar structure, often a temple with 12 gates. So the 12 then can be the number of the completed process of the universe, the interaction of spirit and matter. But 7 is the number of the process itself, in the influence of heaven on earth, the 7 planets, and the influence within the earth of the heaven upon it, the 7 metals. These 7 metals can be seen not only as 7 kinds of light materialized, but also 7 stages in the interaction and relationship of the combining light and matter. And light and matter themselves are very symbolic. So light, the light element in the metals, can symbolize consciousness, awareness, spirit, intelligence, and will. And the matter side can symbolize and include body, nature, potentiality, all that is physical. The metals as light plus matter are material symbols of spirit and body, consciousness, and physical, and so symbols of humans, that humans are spirit and matter, consciousness evolving within the material world. So these seven metals can be seen not only then as seven kinds of light, but seven stages in the evolution of consciousness within the material world, and seven stages in the evolution of individual beings who are made of consciousness and matter, that is, ourselves, humans. And looked at in this way, there is an ordering from the darker metals, the duller, to the more luminous and shiny metals. But all are mixtures of light and matter, consciousness and body. So in this ordering, the lowest is the lead, and then the lead condition is the state of the human whose consciousness is sunk in and submerged in the body. So much so that the person might believe themselves to be only a body, not even so a consciousness that doesn't even know itself to be a consciousness. Moving up through the metals, these symbolize the different states of consciousness within the body, culminating in the golden state. The golden state in which matter is transformed in such a way that the light and spirit and consciousness can shine through it. It's not sunk into it, it's not separated or liberated from matter, but the matter and spirit are harmonized and shining together. So the alchemists had an expression for their goal, what they were aiming at. And they said they were wanting to spiritualize matter and materialize spirit. And the symbol for that completed process was gold. In gold, matter is spiritualized so that the spirit and light and consciousness find a support in matter, in the physical, find suitable tools and instruments, and the spirit is materialized in the gold. It's not, it hasn't flown away from the world or from the earth or from the physical, but the spirit is able to manifest and materialize within the universe. In this way of looking at the metals as symbolic of the stages of consciousness within matter, they tend to be ordered in their relationship to gold, how like or unlike they are to gold, and in their level of luminosity or dullness. One way this was done is starting with lead, Saturn, then one moves to tin, Jupiter, then silver, Moon, with copper, Venus. Some of the gold color starts to emerge, then iron, Mars, and finally culminating in gold, Sun. And Mercury is not one of the steps because Mercury is a principle of transformation. Mercury, Hermes, the god of transformation, of doorways, of transitions. And the metal, the liquid metal Mercury, dissolves the other metals and dissolves them, and then is like the waters of a womb for another level of a more purified, elevated form of metal to emerge. And in this process, it goes between solidification and dissolution or liquefaction, and then to a more solidified state at another level, back and forth. So our life is seen as a process of reaching a state of stability and kind of solidification, fixation, but it's not complete, so it's kind of a premature coagulation which has to be dissolved and kind of fall apart and liquefy so that another level can emerge continuously as we move toward the golden state. So the lead and the planet Saturn are sometimes the metal and planet of depression. And the matter here for the ancients is not just hard stuff. Matter is potentiality that is meant to be actualized, formed, brought into act by life. So as if matter by itself is dark, and then light comes and gives it color. And so potentiality that is unfulfilled and then becomes habituated and solidified in an unfulfilled state is then a leaden state, and that can be one of the reasons for depression. One source of depression and one thing that depression can be a sign of is unfulfilled potential. The light within the metals symbolizes then something divine, something heavenly within us humans. These 6 stages from lead to gold can be divided into 2 groups. The first from lead to silver, Saturn to Moon through tin, and then the next 3 where some gold color starts to appear from copper to up to gold. And sometimes there was a nice color symbolism associated with this, that the movement from lead to silver to moon was described as going from black to white or dark to light. And then the process between the next 3 from copper up to gold was seen as coloring, sometimes called reddening, from red, meaning red taken as the standing for color, colorfulness, red as kind of the pinnacle of all color. The first 3 are lightening, from dark to light, from black to white. And the process of the next 3 is a process of coloring. And so the first 3 from dark to light symbolize and are concerned with the awakening of consciousness and a kind of a separation of consciousness out of matter, both in the life of the individual, each of us, and in the universe and the human species. So consciousness in its first beginnings then is kind of murky, dark, dreamy, going back from into unconsciousness and kind of swimming on top of the water. And so there's a need to move toward light and in some way to separate consciousness out of unconsciousness and even the spirit from matter or from the body to a certain extent, because in the early phases the material and the unconscious and the lower sensory have such a power and such an attraction that they can easily draw and pull consciousness back down to be drowned in these dark waters again. So the first 3 steps then are concerned with a movement from darkness to light and an ascension out of unconsciousness, out of matter in some way, a spiritualization. And historically, we see, I think this explains some things too in the history of humans and of religion and spirituality, that there's an understandable ascending emphasis toward light, toward spirit, away from matter, away from the body. Not because this is the ultimate goal or is absolutely correct, but because of the dangers of the purely physical, the purely natural, and the unconscious. That the emerging consciousness actually needs a certain asceticism in relation to the body and the senses, the material. And so sometimes we have, like for example, Socrates spoke of the body as the prison of the soul, and that through death he was going to be freed from this prison. In many religions, spirituality means spiritualization and immateriality, and immaterialization, a flight from matter, from the physical, from time, from birth. So matter being associated with all those things: body, physicality, birth, becoming and passing away, and the whole world of the unconscious, nature. So that the humans, as consciousness awoke and started to ascend out of unconsciousness, in its property of self-reflection, it seems consciousness sometimes is enamored of itself, and in such a way that it imagines that it would be better to be freed from matter. Mater, it means mother. Matter means the mother from which consciousness came, but the mother that also can be a devouring mother to pull it back into unconsciousness. So self-reflective consciousness can imagine that it would be wonderful to just completely separate and fly from matter, or imagine itself to really be completely immaterial and independent of matter, which is then understandable in its stage, but is, I believe, and in this whole picture, a mistake and incomplete, because the ascending movement from dark to white, from black to white, from dark to light, is incomplete. It's only the first part. Then there's the coloring, the reddening, the coloring that is to reach the golden state, not spirit fleeing and escaped from matter, but spiritualized matter and materialized spirit. So the coloring process is in some ways a return, a descent, whereas the first part from dark to light is more ascending. The coloring is a return of spirit into purified matter and an expanding process. So color means life. Light, the pure white light brought into the material world to bring the colors of life.